Hello and welcome back, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Grace and this is my YouTube channel. You're probably here because you want to get into reading, and I'm by no means a professional, by no means an expert. However, I am someone who used to say you'd never catch me reading. I used to read a ton in middle school, not so much high school, and then it just kind of dropped off for me, and it was never something that I foresaw myself getting back into. But at the very end of this video, I will share with you how I exactly got back into reading. But before that, I'm going to go over how I think you should go about starting your reading journey. And I've got a couple things written down here, but I'm going to mostly be doing this just from my personal experience and also experience of others. Some people really just don't enjoy reading and have no interest in doing so. This video is more so if you have kind of an interest into starting reading. If you're interested, let's go ahead and get into it.
In my own skin and it's warm.
I wanted to start this off by talking about how you're reading, okay? Because a lot of the time when you think about reading, obviously you're thinking about a physical copy of a book in your hands. And I think that whenever your brain stops at just that, it kind of X's out all the ways that there are to read a book or to just take a book in, however you want to say it. My biggest suggestion to you, if you are not sure if you want to read yet, is read on your phone. So if you have an Apple, you have a Books app, and if you don't have an Apple product, then you can get the Amazon Fire app. They do something called Stuff Your Kindle Day. If you haven't heard of that, it's a day where a lot of authors will put their books for free, and you can download them onto your phone or Kindle or Apple Fire or whatever you have and have them for free. They don't go away. Like, I have probably 50 books on my phone from Stuff Your Kindle Day 2 years ago that if I don't have a book around me, I'll start picking up and reading on my phone. But reading on your phone, it obviously is the same thing as reading. However, it gives me kind of a different experience. It almost feels like, maybe you're scrolling on Facebook or Instagram and like reading captions or whatever. Reading on your phone is a great first step because one, you're not wasting any money. Two, if you end up not liking it, you don't have books just laying around your house. And three, it kind of feels like an easier experience and an easier step forward for wanting to begin reading. But if you are just set on wanting to get a physical copy, I would recommend going to your local library and just checking out a book and seeing where that takes you, because books can get expensive. You buy your first and it's like, oh, that's not too bad. It's like $15. And then once you start buying a lot of books, it becomes very expensive. However, if you start out by going to the library to make sure that you enjoy reading before jumping head over feet into it, then I think that you will be on the right track. And then obviously my third option for you is audiobooks. So if you're someone who loves podcasts or you love listening to somebody else tell you a story, maybe you grew up and your parents read you stories before going to bed, then I would recommend an audiobook. An audiobook is just as much reading as sitting down and reading. Now, obviously, if you look at the literal terms of it, it's not the same. However, you're still getting the story, right? Like, the point of reading, to me at least, is like listening to a story be told or reading a story that's being told. Just the story is the point, right? So if you're listening to an audiobook, you're still getting the story. Like, you're still there. So if you're just interested because there is a lot of hype around books right now, and there is, a lot of books that are super popular, and you feel intrigued by maybe the fan art or maybe the short TikToks you're seeing, then I think an audiobook would be a great option for you. And then obviously for your final option, it would be just buying a physical copy. From that, if you want to just go ahead and go out and buy a physical copy, let's get into part 2, which is what you're reading. If you're just getting into reading, I highly recommend that you are getting a fast-paced book. If you get a book that kind of takes a little bit to set up and takes a little bit to get to the true plot of it, it's much easier to put that book down and forget about it. Even I have that issue if a book isn't fast-paced enough. It's very rare that I get into a mood where I can just sit and read a book where they're just building the world or building up the character's description and stuff like that. So I highly recommend fast-paced, very fast-paced. And I'll get into how you can know if a book is fast-paced or not in a minute. Number 2 is the genre. You need to be sure that whenever you're picking out a book, it's in a genre that you already know that you like and enjoy. So exploring genres could come after that, because as you read, you're going to learn more and more in depth of what your reading style is and what you enjoy reading. However, to get into reading and to truly enjoy all that it has to offer, I think starting with a genre you already know and love is a great way to do that. So whenever I first started reading, I loved Twilight when I initially started reading, and I loved loved the hype around like dystopian worlds in middle school and high school. So Hunger Games, Divergent, all of those things, Maze Runner, whatever you chose back in the day. What got me back into reading, again, I'll share more of my story at the very end, but was Hunger Games, and that was a genre I already knew that I was going to really enjoy and like. Okay, so next we're going to talk about what you're reading, YA versus adult. YA can be difficult to explain because it's not just saying like, hey, this is for middle schoolers or hey, this is for teenagers, right? Like sometimes it just means that they can read it because there is nothing maybe explicit or, you know, cuss words or drinking, whatever it is. So when looking at YA versus adult, it really isn't too significant unless you prefer closed door romances, which means no smut, which I'm gonna let you look that up. I'm gonna let you do your research. So if you prefer no smut and stuff like that, there also are adult books that are closed door, but whenever you're getting into specifics like that, you are gonna have to like look up whenever you pick up a book and you're like, I want to read this, you are gonna have to look up kind of what it is. But a lot of YA books come across very juvenile, and obviously it's young adult, but like the speech, the characters, the growth and stuff like that can sometimes be annoying for people. However, I do think there's a section of YA which I would say is fantasy and romantasy, where it really doesn't play too heavy of an effect on the book itself outside of closed door, you know, no cursing, stuff like that. And sometimes there even is cursing in YA. So YA versus adult is not super serious when you're picking a book, unless you specifically want something very grown up or you specifically want something that's closed door. When it comes down to that, you're just gonna have to look at your personal preferences. I do think that YA books in the fantasy world are much more fast-paced because they're having to cater to a younger audience. But again, that's totally up to you. And then my last part of what you're reading is how to pick what you're reading. So obviously this kind of goes into genre. You cannot just see a book on TikTok and then that's all you see and go and get it and expect to enjoy it, okay? Because whenever someone's posting on TikTok, even when I'm posting my own personal book reviews, you know, it's not always agreeable, okay? So me sharing my one personal review with you shouldn't be enough to make you go out and buy the book. I think that, you know, looking around a bit, maybe going on Goodreads and looking at the no spoiler reviews and really making sure that it's something that you will like. I've had an issue where it's just like, oh, this person liked this book, so I'm gonna read it, and it was something not in my wheelhouse or something that maybe isn't what I want to be reading about or anything like that, and it can burn you. So like from my personal experience, me and my friend Lauren wanted to start a book club. So our first book club pick was Magnolia Parks, and we were so excited because we thought it was like a cutesy rich London girl and her life, like rich London society, socialite, stuff like that, and we were so excited to read it. Well, there's actually a very toxic relationship in that book, and that was very triggering for me personally, and I absolutely hated that book. It was an awful time reading it. It took me probably a month to get through it, and the only reason I did finish it was because it was book club, and it was the first book of book club, and I was so excited, so I just couldn't leave it behind. But that is what I mean when I say really make sure you know what you're reading before you read it, and that's very crucial in the beginning of your reading journey, because your reading journey might end up getting cut short if you have too bad of an experience, or you could go into just your very own never-ending book slump, which we don't want to happen. We've got down how you're reading, we've got down what you're reading. Now let's talk about the mass amounts of misconceptions around reading, book talks, stuff like that.
I am
Now I've got some written down, but there are also some that I just wanted to talk about conversationally and share my own personal opinion on it. And again, my opinion is not fact. I'm just one girl. So the first misconception is I read slow. And that should never be a reason to not read, okay? Because one, there is never a pacing on how you should be reading, how fast you should be reading, how many books you should read in a year, stuff like that. And if that freaks you out, then like stuff like the reading challenge on Goodreads, just don't even do it. Just don't even pay attention to it, okay? I did my reading challenge on Goodreads this year, and it started kind of putting pressure on me for reading, so I just kind of stepped away from Goodreads for a while. Reading is supposed to be fun when you get out of school. Like, it's no longer a forced you have to read. It's no longer you have to write a paper after this. So it does not matter how fast or slow you read. That should never come into the conversation in your own personal mind. And you're never in a competition with whoever your friends are if they're reading too. You're never in a competition, okay? Like, read at your own pace. And then number two to that, if the way that you're reading is annoying you, audiobooks are 100% the way to go. And audiobooks have gotten a lot more fun because you have like, what do they call that when it's like the different characters are reading? They'll get like a bunch of voice actors to read different characters, and it gets really a lot more fun nowadays. So just audiobook it up. You know what I mean? Like, there is no rules to reading. It's just fun. It's just a good time. Number two, I cannot focus whenever I sit down to read. DNF that book, babe. DNF it. DNF it. You're not going to hurt anybody's feelings. And that is another reason why I say go to the library if you want to do physical copies, or get the free ones whenever they do Stuff Your Kindle Day. Because if you don't like the first book you're getting into, right? Like, you can't focus. I'm telling you, you can't focus because of the book. It is not because of you. Sometimes it's because of you. But if it's fast-paced enough and it's gripping enough, then you will be able to focus. So I would say DNF that book. DNF that book. It's not you, it's her. The next one, reading is boring. Again, try a different book genre. Go a whole different genre, okay? If you think reading is boring, then you have to understand just how many genres and micro genres and authors and all of those things that there are, and that author might just not be hitting the spot for you. That writing style might not be right for you. That genre in itself may not be right for you. So just you don't have to keep trying. Obviously, you don't have to do anything that I'm saying, but I would recommend just keep going and pick a different genre, pick a different book, return that book to the library, DNF that hoe, and you'll be good. Okay, so other misconceptions that I've just heard through the grapevine that really aren't all that serious, to me at least, is that book talk is ruining books and reading. And I feel like that's such a contradictive statement simply because, okay, you can enjoy whatever you want to read, okay? Reading is a form of education, but it is also a form of entertainment, right? So like, you could enjoy the most brain-rotted version of reading in the world and it's still not ruined, because there is an author somewhere writing a style that you like, and you, the reader, are somewhere hoping that author releases more books, right? So I don't think that it's fair to say that book talk is ruining reading, because we are all our own people and we all can look up our own book recommendations, right? And without book talk, I highly doubt I ever would have even gotten back into reading. And I feel like there are a lot of people who could say that's the same for them. So maybe it's just because I hold book talk close to my heart. Obviously, I don't go to book talk for every single book that I read. However, I do really enjoy it. I love that I have found creators who are interested in the same things as me, and that I can sit and watch a 45-minute video of somebody else reading 5 different books and listening to them talk about it. You know, I think that if you find your correct book talkers, book YouTubers, and they like the genres you like and they have similar styles and tastes to you, I think that it can be very beneficial. But again, before you read a book, like I said, you should kind of look at the reviews yourself. You can look on Goodreads, Amazon has a review section. Really, anywhere you buy a book is going to have a review section of the book. So I just think that if you see a book that you're kind of interested in from a book talker, just look it up on Goodreads. I don't even think you have to have a Goodreads account. If you do, all you have to input is like your email. I do not think that book talk ruined reading. I think that it has exponentially grown the amount of people excited about reading and people who thought that they wouldn't read again. But that is just my own personal opinion. So now we're gonna get into my recommendations. My recommendations, I did a section for TV shows, movies, and then just my own personal recommendations to you from my bookshelf. So for TV shows, I've got Grey's Anatomy. If you really enjoyed Grey's Anatomy, I really did. I've probably watched it through way too many times, but what can I do? I'm just a girl. If you enjoy Grey's Anatomy, I would highly, highly recommend all of Ali Hazelwood's books to you. She writes STEM romances. Now that she does have Bride, which is not a STEM romance, that is her first step into fantasy. I loved that book. I loved that book. Very fast paced, very good. But on top of that, if you enjoyed Grey's Anatomy, Ali Hazelwood has a way of writing about STEM, but it's still so much banter, still so much fun. Her books are funny. They make me laugh out loud. And it's always has like a really heartwarming message in it as well. So I think you would really, really enjoy Ali Hazelwood. My personal favorite by her is called Love Theoretically, but I do recommend reading in publishing order because the other characters do come in the books a little bit along the way. So I believe believe it goes Love Hypothesis, Love on the Brain, Love Theoretically, and then I don't think they come into that. Those three are what you should read in order. And then she has a book that has 3 novellas in it. And then she also has Bride, Not in Love, and Check and Mate. All of her books are good. I've read all of them. She has a new one coming out in February. I highly recommend her books. She is my #1 romance author. I'm obsessed with her. If you love Vampire Diaries, you cannot get upset with me for recommending you ACOTAR. There's so many parallels in my opinion. So obviously the Vampire Diaries, I'm gonna do this, hopefully no spoilers. It's a younger female who gets brought into this world, and she has 2 best friends. She's brought into this world that she has no idea what to do about, and some of them are forcefully turned to vampires, and it's just a whole shebang. Well, ACOTAR is a young girl who gets brought into this world of Fae, and she has 2 sisters, and people are forcefully turned to Fae, and everything is crazy. So I really just see parallels between ACOTAR and the Vampire Diaries, where if you enjoyed the Vampire Diaries, the worlds are not identical. Obviously, you got vampires versus Fae. However, I do believe there are parallels enough to where you really will enjoy ACOTAR. And I know you've probably been recommended ACOTAR 100 times, and I will be that person. I will also be telling you to read ACOTAR because it's just too good, even though I'm sure you've already heard of it. But whatever, I had to. Okay, if you really enjoyed One Tree Hill, I highly recommend the Knock 'Em Out series. The Knock 'Em Out series is not perfectly identical, obviously, but it has that found family aspect. If you like, I guess what I'm saying is if you like One Tree Hill, then you're gonna like interconnected standalones, which essentially all that means is that your first novel is about a female main character and a male main character, and your second novel, the female and male main character are going to have something to do with the female main character and male main character in the first book, right? So like a lot of the time you'll hear it's a group of siblings or a group of friends, and in the Knock 'Em Out series, it is 2 brothers and a best friend, and it is small town. It is a little bit cowboy, but not super heavy on the cowboy. It's just good, and I think that you'll enjoy it if you like things like One Tree Hill. And then if you liked New Girl, I highly recommend the Twisted series. This sounds really strange, right? Like these 2 are like, how are you even connecting these 2? I could not think of anything for New Girl. I love New Girl as a TV show, and the reason that I ended up going with the Twisted series is because there is such close friendships in this book. So like, it's a group of 4 girls. There are 4 books, and it's about this friend group of 4 girls. And the first one especially is like, she is the sister of this guy, and that brother and sister kind of connect everybody. Okay, so the sister connects the other 3 girls, and the brother connects this guy who knows this guy, and that's like all who end up together. So that's kind of why I put New Girl, is because it does have this own found family aspect to it, where the friend groups will just kind of come together and hang out. And that's kind of the end of the line of where it meets, though. I will say that Twisted is kind of on the edge of dark romance. It's a little bit spicier than your average romance book, but it's still really good. It's not like, the Twisted books are not like comedic at all the way New Girl is, but there is some banter. I don't know, the more I talk about it, the less it equals out to me. But if you found anything of interest in what I said about the Twisted series, then I think you'd enjoy it. But now let's talk about movies. I only wrote down 1 because most of the movies that I watched growing up came from a book series. So I wrote down The Hunger Games, and obviously I'm going to tell you to read the Hunger Games books, okay? If you enjoyed Hunger Games and you never read the books, it's a whole different experience, and I highly recommend you read them. However, if you're wanting a more adult version of that, then I could not recommend Light Lark to you more. It's not 100% the same, okay? They're not going up against the government that's running the districts like it is in the Hunger Games. However, it is like, you know, a game at the beginning in the first book. It's like these islands, the island only comes back every 100 years, and they have to compete to kind of like break all of their curses. Each different group has curses. So you've got Wildling, Skyling, Sunling, Moonling. What are they called? Nightshade? I guess just nightshade people. They all each have their own curses on their group of people, and each of them have like a ruler, and the rulers all come every 100 years, and they compete to try and break the curses. So it is kind of that aspect of high intensity, trying to figure things out, kind of trying to break curses, whatever. I just think that you would enjoy Light Lark if you enjoyed the Hunger Games, but that is where it ends with my movie recommendations. Now I'm just gonna recommend books for beginners from my own personal point of view. I'm always, like I said, going to recommend the Hunger Games. I think it is a great way to get back into reading. The books themselves, although there are multiple, are pretty short. Not only that though, they have new ones coming out, right? So the Songbird and Snake, the that one just came out recently, and then the movie came out, and there is another one coming out. So it would be a great time to jump back into that series. And not only that, you can watch the movies after you read the books if you enjoy doing things like that. I love reading a book and then watching the movie after, so that would be a great way to get into it as well. But outside of that, my books for beginners that I've written down is the Rebel Blue Ranch series. Now I am reading this series as we speak, so it is kind of strange for me to like just be reading it and recommending it to you, but these are some of the most fast-paced books that I've read in a while. You open that first page and you are immediately in the story, and it's not very often that I find a book where I'm reading and then I look up and it's been an hour and I didn't even realize time was passing. And that is my favorite experience as a reader, and these books, all of them so far, have given me that. I love them so much. But that one is going to be, if you're looking for romance, it's a small town romance. They're not the spiciest books I've ever read. There's probably 1 to 2 spice scenes in each of the books. I think the first one was the spiciest in my personal opinion. They're very, very good. I really enjoy them. And then the next would be the Shatter Me series. This book series is not spicy at all from what I remember, and it is a YA series, but it's a really great intro into romantically/fantasy. It's really quick read. I think I read all 6 books in the month of December alone last year, and they were so good. I literally read them so quickly, and if I'm correct, they're not super expensive when it comes to box sets. Like, they're not too bad, but it's really good, a really good way to get into it, and they're really gonna grab you. They're very fast paced and something is always happening. I loved those books, and I thought that they were a great option for beginners. The next one I'm going to recommend to you is Assistant to the Villain, and I recommend this one especially if you're wanting to get into strictly like romantasy and fantasy. Shatter Me you can still read if you're into romance, and I think you'll still have a good time and enjoy it, but specifically for romantasy, I think that Assistant to the Villain and Apprentice to the Villain are a great, fantastic way to start, because the world building is so simple. It's such a simple world and a simple layout for fantasy that it's so hard to misunderstand. So that's the thing with fantasies, is there is a lot of world building, so it can take you a while to get really into the book, because you have to learn about this whole brand new world, you know, their politics, how they handle things, how they work as beings. So I think that Assistant to the Villain is a great way to get into that. And then my last recommendation is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. That book was so good to me. It's such a great book if you want to just get into general fiction. So there is a subplot of romance, but I would say that the main point of the book is our female main character kind of finding herself and navigating life after she has lost somebody. I highly recommend that book. It's got a little bit of, I think that they technically say that Ashley Poston's books are paranormal romance or fiction or whatever. Not paranormal in the scary sense, but like there is like some magic written into her books. But The 7-Year Slip is not a super long book. It grabs you from the beginning, and I think that it's just a happy book. It leaves you feeling lighter after you read it, so I recommend it. Now, so let's talk about how I got into reading. So my friend Lauren, who I met probably back in 2021 when I worked at a restaurant job, I met her and I walked into work one day and she was standing at the bar and she had a book open, and I was like, oh my god, what are you reading? And it was A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas, which is a part of the ACOTAR series. And she told me about it, and she was like, I don't know, you'll probably think it's a little bit weird. And I was like, no girl, I won't find anything weird, just tell me about it. So she told me it was about fairies, and I was like, girl, what? So anyways, then I go on vacation and I found The Hunger Games at the thrift store probably 2 years before this, and I had just sitting in mine and my boyfriend's room, and so I was like, I'll just take this with me. So I took The Hunger Games with me on vacation, read it so fast, immediately ordered Catching Fire and Mockingjay, read those so fast whenever I got home, and then my boyfriend gave me a gift card for Target, and I bought like probably 15 books, and they were of all different genres. Okay, so I read all of them, and ACOTAR was at the bottom. For some reason, I was not interested in picking up this book at all. And then I got to ACOTAR and my reading game changed, okay? My reading game flipped upside down on its head. And after reading ACOTAR, I couldn't get enough. I literally could not get enough of reading. I felt like it was the most exciting thing to do. Like, I don't know. It was just so good. So that was my own personal reading journey. The Hunger Games has a big place in my heart because it is what reignited my love for reading. So that is why I recommend it so heavily. The same for ACOTAR. ACOTAR is really what lit a fire under me to read just as much as I possibly could. And especially for romantasy, I love it. I love it so much. And now I also wanted to just say something like, as far as like how many books you read a year or how quickly you read, it will speed up. Like when you first start, it's going to be a slow start, but the quickness of how much you can read will vastly change as you continue reading. I think my first year reading, I probably only read like 20 books in a year. And then my second year reading, it was probably more around 30 to 45. And then so far this year, I've read 58 books. So it does pick up and it does progress, but there is no timeline or forcing you to read or forcing you to keep going. I just highly recommend you do it. So that is how I think you should get into reading if you want to. If you guys have any questions, please leave them below for me. And I'm thinking about posting on my Instagram kind of just questions around reading that people might have. That way we can get to know each other a little bit more, and maybe I can answer any other questions that I didn't answer in this video. But thank you so much for watching. I actually had a really good time filming this, and I'm hoping to film more videos like this. So subscribe. I never say that in any of my videos, but subscribe if you want to, and like this video, and I will see you later.